4 years back, almost to the week, I was living with my partner in a rental up in the West Hills outside Portland. I still catch myself checking locks twice at night, which is probably the only thing that's stuck with me. The place was a small 2-story cottage tucked behind the main house on a narrow couple of acres. My mother-in-law owned it, rented the main house to a professor who kept odd hours but always waved when I walked the dogs. The neighbors on either side were older men. One I barely saw. The other watched the property line like it was his job. I'd stayed alone there plenty of times. It was just a house, or that's what I thought.
The cottage was barely 800 square feet, split between a living room, kitchen, and a bathroom downstairs, 2 bedrooms stacked up top. The kind of place where you could hear the pipes rattle if someone turned on a faucet in the other room. There was this old fridge in the kitchen that hummed so loud it was basically a second heartbeat. I kept my keys in a chipped ceramic bowl by the front door, and the dogs, 2 of them, both mutts, slept in a heap under the window. I remember thinking it was the first place that felt like ours.
There was this rhythm to the property. Professor's car headlights coming up the drive, one neighbor's radio leaking through the trees, the other's porch light always on, even in the middle of the day. My mother-in-law said nothing bad had ever happened there. I believed her. I didn't think about locks much. I didn't think about the woods behind the house either. The first night it started, I'd skipped my mom's game night. I was alone, making dinner, ignoring her texts. I went to use the bathroom, window at the front of the house, blinds half shut. From there, I could see the professor's headlights swing up the drive. I remember thinking, that's just her, nothing weird. The dogs started whining at the front door. I figured they wanted out, but I always checked the yard first. Raccoons, sometimes deer. The motion light on the side of the house flickered on. I told myself it was an animal. I went back to the kitchen, but the dogs wouldn't settle. Then I heard the front door handle, metal on metal. Not quite a knock, more like someone trying to work the lock from outside. My first thought was my sister and Mom had come to drag me out. The handle kept moving. I realized my sister had a key. She never knocked. My tongue felt thick. The dogs lost it, barking, claws scrabbling on the laminate. Then the back door handle started rattling, harder, and I swear I heard the weight of a body hit the door. That's when I stopped pretending it was anyone I knew. I grabbed a kitchen knife, ran upstairs, and called my mom. I asked if she was messing with me. She wasn't. She sounded out of breath, said she'd be there in 5 minutes. Her bunco game was just down the hill. By the time she got there, the yard was empty. No footprints, no one hiding in the trees. I tried to tell myself it was a prank or maybe a drunk neighbor. I didn't sleep much that night. My jaw ached in the morning from how hard I'd been clenching it. Over the next year, it happened again. 6 times, maybe more. I lost track. Always when I was alone. Handles jiggled, windows rattled. Sometimes a motion light would flick on for no reason. I tried to tell myself it was wind or animals, or maybe I'd left something unlocked. The 3rd time, my partner found a muddy footprint pressed against the back door. That was the first time anyone else believed me. I remember the exact shape of it. Heel dug in, toes splayed like whoever it was had tried to kick the door in. I still see it sometimes when I close my eyes. After that, my dad came up and helped us reinforce the doors. He found beer cans in the brush under the windows. Cheap stuff, faded labels. There were little piles of rocks, sticks snapped at odd angles, like someone had been crouching there, watching. The motion light by the main house had been unscrewed, just enough to keep it from turning on. I kept telling myself it was just some kid, or a neighbor messing around, but the explanations started to sound thinner every time I said them out loud. I stopped letting myself look out the windows after dark. 4 years ago this week, my partner was out of state fighting wildfires. I'd moved into the main house by then. The cottage out back was rented to friends. That night, everyone was gone, just me and the dogs. I had friends over, locked up after they left, checked every door. I was on the phone with my mom, walking downstairs, when I saw the back door. Open. Not cracked. Wide open. The lock was still turned. I felt the cold air in my teeth. I don't remember grabbing the gun. I don't remember putting shoes on. My hands felt too big, like I was wearing someone else's skin. The dogs wouldn't stop barking. I was in the car before I realized I'd left the kitchen light on. I drove. I kept driving. I don't know how long. It took the police half an hour to get there. By then, whoever it was, if there was anyone, was gone. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. They said maybe it was a neighbor or someone camping in the woods. I couldn't tell them why the lock was still turned from the inside. I couldn't tell them why the air in the kitchen still felt pressed in, like the house was holding its breath. We never figured out who it was. The only thing left behind was a single beer can under the kitchen window, crushed flat. I never bought that brand. I still have it, somewhere in a box. The label's almost gone. That's all I've got. The fridge in my new place is quiet. I still keep the keys in a bowl by the door.
This was January 2001. I'd just retired, and we'd finally closed on the cabin up on Ridge Hollow. 5 acres, most of it sloped, all of it wild. The gravel drive was so long you'd lose the mailbox in the rear view before you hit the first curve. The nearest neighbor, I think, was 1.5 miles as the crow flies. 3 by road, maybe more. We wanted quiet. I think we got it. That week, everything was boxes and dust. We split the moving. My husband Ray took a load back to the old place to finish up. I stayed behind to watch the new house, make sure the pipes didn't freeze. It was supposed to be one night. I remember thinking I'd finally have the bed to myself. No snoring, no TV glow. I didn't even bother with curtains yet. That front door was all glass. Seemed peaceful enough. Night comes early in the mountains. By 7, the woods press up against the glass, and the porch light is the only thing holding back the dark. The only sound is the fridge. Old, runs too cold, hums with a loose panel. I remember brushing my teeth and thinking about how the silence felt. Not empty, but compressed. Like the house was holding its breath for me. I crawled into bed with a book and a mug of tea. The sheets were still stiff from the box. I left the lamp on, just in case I needed to get up. I could see the faint outline of the porch through the glass door, the porch light making a rectangle on the floor. My jaw had been tight all day, but I only noticed it then when I tried to relax. I woke up once, around midnight. The fridge had stopped humming, just for a second, but it was enough to pull me out of sleep. I checked the clock, 12:47. I listened for a car on the drive, or maybe a coyote, but all I heard was the tick from the old ceramic lamp's switch. My tongue felt dry, like velvet. It must have been just after 1 when the sound hit. A knock, no, more like a bang on the glass front door. The kind of sound that vibrates through the frame. I froze. I didn't hear a car, and the gravel drive is loud, even if you're creeping. I waited for the fridge to kick back on, but it didn't. My pulse was a drum in my ears. I told myself it was the wind. Maybe a branch had snapped against the glass. But the trees were set back, and the porch ran the length of the house. I waited, counting my breaths, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. My left hand had found the headboard. I don't remember moving it. 5 minutes, maybe less, and it came again. Louder. A full palm against the glass, not a knuckle. The sound was flat, no echo, just pressure. I waited for footsteps or a voice or the crunch of gravel. Nothing. My spine felt hollow. I kept waiting for the fridge to start up, or for a car to pull away, or anything at all. The silence pressed in. I tried to remember if I'd locked the side door. I tried to remember if the phone was on the charger or in the kitchen. My mouth tasted like copper. 3rd time. The glass flexed. No voice, no footsteps, just impact. I don't remember if I moved. I think I held the quilt up to my chin. I must have blinked because the lamp's light made a red shape behind my eyelids. The air in my throat felt too big. I counted to 60. Then again. The knocks stopped. I waited for a car to leave, or the fridge to start, or the porch light to flicker. None of that happened. I don't know how long I stayed like that. My back ached from not moving. The lamp's cord pressed a line into my palm. When the sun came up, I checked the porch. No footprints on the boards, no tire tracks in the gravel. The glass was clean except for a smudge, low, right side, almost like a palm print, but not quite. I wiped it with my sleeve. The fridge started humming again. I never found out who or what knocked. Ray said he didn't see anyone on the road when he came back. I still check the glass for prints. Most mornings, there's nothing.
This was the year I turned 11. My sister Mika was 14. My brother Rowan was 8. Our dad, he worked from home, software mostly. I remember the numbers. Money came in, but the debts were louder. Vacations were a kind of rumor in our house, something we talked about more than did. That night, we were halfway through a horror movie, something with a lot of highway accidents and fake blood, when the phone rang. Dad left the couch, came back with that look he got when he was calculating something in his head, and then he pulled Mom out of the room. Rowan took the chance to press pause and tried to get our dog Pepper to sit on his lap. He'd always do that when the movie got too tense. 10 minutes later, our parents came back and said we'd be spending the weekend at a cabin. Dad's client had a place by a lake up in the mountains, and he'd offered us a deal. I remember thinking it sounded like a bribe for finishing a job, but nobody asked questions. The rest of that night was just noise. Mom tearing through closets, Mika arguing about which shoes to bring, Rowan sulking because he'd wanted to finish the movie. I tried to help, but mostly I just kept running lists in my head. Toothbrush, charger, Pepper's leash. I didn't sleep much. The next day after school, we loaded everything into the van. Dad's hands were shaking when he started the engine. I only noticed because he dropped the keys twice. The drive was 2.5 hours of headlights and static. By the time we reached the cabin, my neck felt welded to the seatbelt. The place was flat and long, ranch style, with a porch that sagged at one end. Inside, the air was cold, and the walls had that hollow sound, like nobody had lived there for a while. There was a little loft, more a crawl space than a loft, full of old board games and a faded beanbag. Mika called dibs on the room with the twin bed. That left Rowan and me with the bigger bed, right next to a window with no curtain. The only lamp was on my side. There was a closet across from us, but the handle wouldn't turn. I tried it twice, harder the second time, and it didn't budge. I don't know why, but I kept thinking about what could fit in a closet that size. We played a few rounds of Monopoly in the crawl space. Mika kept winning. Rowan kept accusing her of cheating, but he always did that. By 11, everyone was wiped. I remember lying down, the lamp burning a dull yellow on my left. Rowan's feet kept finding my shins under the blanket. I tried to keep my eyes on the ceiling, but every time I blinked, I'd catch a bit of the window's edge. There was nothing out there, just black. I must have dropped off fast, because the next thing I remember, Rowan was pressed against my arm, whispering something I couldn't make out. Rowan was trying to get under me, his hands cold and shaking. I sat up, and for a second my brain didn't know what it was looking at. There was something pale, shaped like a person, moving away from the window. Not walking, more like it was being pulled back, slow and jerky. I didn't get a good look. My body just went rigid. I grabbed Rowan by the wrist, and we left the room so fast I don't remember my feet touching the floor. We found our parents in their room. Dad was half awake. Mom was already annoyed. They told us we were dreaming, or maybe it was a raccoon. I tried to explain, but the words didn't come out right. Rowan wouldn't let go of my arm. Mom said if we saw anything else to tell them. I remember agreeing, even though I didn't believe it. We went back, switched sides. Rowan refused to sleep near the window. I told him a story, something about a robot and a spaceship, and then I must have passed out. Next morning, we walked around the lake. The water was still, green at the edges, and the dock creaked when you stepped on it. Dad kept checking his phone, even though there was no signal. We lasted about an hour before he decided we'd spend the day in town. The shops were all antiques and knickknacks, the kind of stuff that collects dust and stories nobody tells. We ate lunch, wandered, ate dinner. I remember the smell of fried onions, and the way the dog kept pulling at her leash like she wanted to go back. We got back after dark. Mika made a joke about the cabin being haunted, and everyone laughed, but Dad stopped short on the porch. He put his hand up, told us to wait. The door wasn't latched. He pushed it open with one finger. I remember the way the hinges sounded, dry, dragging. He went inside alone. We stood on the porch, Rowan's hand digging into my sleeve. Mom called Dad's name. He said we could come in, but his voice was flat. He locked the door behind us. Dad took Mom into the bedroom for a chat. Mika tried to distract us with another round of board games. I could hear Mom's voice from behind the door, sharp, clipped. We played for a while. Dad came out, joined us, but he kept glancing at the windows. The game ended early. Dad said it was bedtime. Mika protested. She was old enough to stay up later, but he didn't budge. Rowan and I took the same spots. I read to him something about astronauts and a lost dog. His breathing slowed, but but I stayed awake longer than I meant to. The lamp on my side of the bed hummed, a faint static under everything. I kept thinking about the unlocked door, the way Dad's jaw had been tight all night. I don't remember falling asleep. I woke up to Dad's arm around me, hauling me out of bed. Rowan was already in his other arm, limp and blinking. The hallway was full of movement, Mom pulling Mika by the elbow, the dog barking at the back door. There was a high-pitched whine, like a kettle left on too long. Dad didn't say anything. He just kept moving. The van door slammed. Dad drove with one hand, the other gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles looked bleached. Nobody spoke. The dog whined, pressed up against the back seat. I kept waiting for someone to say what was happening, but nobody did. We got home before sunrise. Pepper circled the living room 3 times before settling under the table. Dad didn't talk about it. He took Mika aside the next day, told her something in a low voice. Rowan and I weren't included. I tried to listen from the hallway, but all I caught was the word footprints. Dad went back for our stuff the next afternoon. He came home with the bags and nothing else. No explanation, no lecture. I noticed his shoes were muddy, streaked with something that looked like clay. He left them by the door. I stared at them for a long time, trying to decide if the stains were new or if I'd just never noticed before. Years later, Mika told me what Dad had said. When he went back, he found footprints, several pairs, pressed into the mud outside our window. Some were small, some looked too wide to be a kid's. They circled the cabin, then stopped, right under where our bed had been.